ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا وسيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله صلى الله عليه وسلم فإن أصدق الحديث كتاب الله وخير الهدى هدى محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وشر الأمور محدثاتها وكل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة وكل ضلالة في النار. Indeed, all the praise for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We praise Allah. We seek His aid, His mercy, and His forgiveness. We seek refuge in Allah ta'ala from the evil of our deeds and from the evil of our souls. Brothers and sisters in Islam, we would like to welcome everyone who is here to witness this very special occasion and preparation for one of the greatest months of the entire year, and this is the month of Ramadan. Inshallah, we'd like to have a lecture series today or tomorrow pertaining to some of the aspects whereby the believer, the Muslim, who fast, iman and ihtisab, who fast with iman, faith in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, wal ihtisab, expecting reward only from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that we will attain what the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, that Allah will grant us غُفِرَ لَهُ مَا تَقَدَّمَ مِنْ ذَنْبِهِ, forgiveness of sins. Forgiveness of sins. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says in the book, شَهْرُ رَمَضَانَ الَّذِي أُنزِلَ فِيهِ الْقُرْآنِ. The month of Ramadan is the month whereby Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent down the Quran. هُدًى لِلنَّاسِ, guided for mankind. وَبَيِّنَاتٍ مِنَ الْهُدَى وَالْفُرْقَانِ, and it is a criteria between the right and the wrong. فَمَنْ شَهِدَ مِنْكُمُ الشَّهْرَ فَلْيَصُمْهُ. Whosoever witnessed the month of Ramadan, then let him fast. And likewise, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا كُتِبَ عَلَيْكُمُ الصِّيَامُ. O believers, O people of Iman, fasting has been prescribed upon you, كَمَا كُتِبَ عَلَى الَّذِينَ مِنْ قَبْلِكُمْ, like it was prescribed for those who have come before you, لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ, so that you may attain taqwa, piety of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And what is taqwa? Some of the ulama summarize it. They say that taqwa is doing all of that which Allah commands you to do. Stay away from His prohibitions. Both. You can't have one without the other. And inshallah, we'd like to give some talks, some nasiha on how to best get the most benefit from this blessed month of Ramadan. Inshallah, our first talk tonight will be our brother Nadir. May Allah Ta'ala preserve him. Inshallah Ta'ala, we would like to welcome him. Jazakallah khair. Barakallah feek.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salamu ala rasulillah wa ba'd. So alhamdulillah, first we'd like to thank the Idara, the administrative staff, the Imam, for putting on this beautiful program for us to prepare for the month of Ramadan. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala place a heavy on their scales and grant them Jannatul Firdaus al-A'la. Ameen. So the topic at hand today, inshallah, is the connection or the relationship with the Quran that we have during the month of Ramadan. Before getting into the actual talk about the month of Ramadan, why is it that we decide to start to do this now? Because this is from our belief. This is Ibn Rajab rahimahullah ta'ala. He said in his explanation of the hadith collection by Imam Muslim, and he mentioned that the Salaf, what they used to do is they used to pay their zakah forward and their increase in their Quran in the month of Sha'ban in preparation for the month of Ramadan. So what we have is that there's a preparation for the month of Ramadan. Ramadan doesn't just appear and we're ready for it. Ramadan, we know that it is a time period, that it is coming, and it's something that we have to prepare for. It is something that we spend our entire year preparing for. That everything that we do throughout the year, it is supposed to manifest itself in the month of Ramadan. The way that our taqwa, the way we try to cultivate ourselves, our nufus, our souls, ourselves, everything is supposed to come forward in the month of Ramadan. And from that biggest means, it is the Quran. What is our relationship with the Quran? So, bid'Allah tabarak ta'ala, today we're going to be reading from a book. Inshallah, we'll have some copies available tomorrow. It's from one of the Mashaykh of Kuwait. He entitled the book Al-Hal Ma'al Qur'ani fi Ramadan. Your relationship or your situation with the Quran during the month of Ramadan. Sheikh Musa'ad al-Tayyar was one of the Mashaykh of Kuwait. And just so we know who he is, a little bit about him, the Sheikh Habibullah Ta'ala, he's from Ahlul Sunnah. From just a brief of him, he studied with some of the Kibar ulama of our time. He is a graduate from the Muhammad bin Saud University. He's also, after graduating, he then became a teacher, then graduate. He conducted the master's program. And he is from one of the Mashaykh today, Hafidhahullah Ta'ala, from Kuwait. One of the most unique things about this book is he really dwells into an actual relationship with the Quran for us today. Many of the books, Wallah alhamd, he got all his proofs and evidence from the books that came before, but this is the importance of having the ulama of our time so that we can have correlation to how we should implement it in our day and time. So the Shaykh, Habibullah Ta'ala, he begins by praising Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, acknowledging that all praises for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And he starts with the same verses that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, شهر رمضان الذي أنزل فيه القرآن هدى للناس وبينات من الهدى والفرقان. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says the month of Ramadan is which the Quran was revealed, a guidance for the people and clear proofs of guidance and furqan, criteria. And it continues, as Imam Mahmoud Abdullah Ta'ala, he mentioned. But we want to focus on these aspects and these parts about the revelation of the Quran in this month. Inna anzalna fi laylatin mubarakah kunna munzirina fiha wa yufraqa kullu amrin hakimin amran min indina. Inna kunna mursilin, from Surah Al-Dukhan, right? Ayah 3 to Ayah 5. The focus is going to be Ayah 3. And we have sent down during blessed night, which is the night of Laylatul Qadr. And this is our focus, is that in this beautiful month of Ramadan, the thing that many of the ulama that they speak about is that in the thing that gave Ramadan this high status was the Quran. The Quran being revealed in this month was the defining moment for the Shahr Ramadan to have this Mubarak, for being of this great lofty status, from it being revealed to Allah wa Mahfuz, to the from the preserved tablet, that it is a means for it, and then it being sent down in the night of Laylatul Qadr is another means that it was making the night of Laylatul Qadr another blessed one, a blessed day of one. The Shaykh begins, Habibullah Ta'ala, talking about these ayat to show us and emphasize to us that this month of Ramadan is a very lofty status. And for us as Muslims, people that actually want to better ourselves, لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ, that we have hopes to be more pious by the time we leave the month of Ramadan, that is incumbent upon us to have an actual relationship with this month. And that month relationship starts, as we mentioned, with the Quran. The Quran is our relationship. It is the habl al-mamdud. It is the rope that is one has descended that has descended one to the earth, and one is with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this is our direct connection, not just with the month, but with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And many of us, we're deficient in our relationship in the Quran. Meaning that we go days without no Quran being recited. We go days without actually picking up the Mus'haf. The beauty of having the Masahif, of having the actual written down book, as Sheikh Sulaiman Ruhaili Hafidhullah Ta'ala, that he mentioned that the barakah, the true barakah, lies within reading from the actual Mus'haf. Because there are rulings that come with actually reciting from the Mus'haf that don't come with having your phone. Meaning that anybody can pick up their phone. We all should have a Mus'haf, the Quran, on our phones. But it's not a Mus'haf. It's the words of the Quran. So a woman, as Sheikh Sulaiman Ruhaili Hafidhullah Ta'ala, he mentioned that if a woman, if she is on her menses and she picks up her phone, there's no issue of her reading the book. She doesn't have to put on gloves to touch her phone. But she would have to put on gloves, if that is the position, and to hold the Mus'haf. One does not have to be in wudu to hold their phone. They should be in wudu to hold the Mus'haf. So there's specific rulings and virtues that come with actually having the Mus'haf. So that should be an encouragement for each and every one of us. If we don't have a worn Mus'haf in our house, something is wrong. Something is extremely wrong. Majority of times, we go into the masajid, you can look around, the majority of the masahif are brand new. Meaning the bindings are still there. It's still a book at the end of the day. And the binding of it is going to wear and tear. If a person is holding it open to read it, it is going to wear. But unfortunately, what we find with ourselves is our relationship with the Quran is deficient. And this should be proof for us. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says in so many different places about ayat that for us that we can sit down and reflect upon. Ash-Shams, the Qamar, the Duaa, all of these different things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the sun, the moon, the stars, all of these different things were means for us to reflect upon so that we may change our status, our situation. We may change our hal, our situation. So we should look at our Mus'haf. If we don't actually have a Mus'haf that I say is mine, where's our relationship with the Quran? Where? If I don't have a Mus'haf that I highlight things in, how can I say I have a relationship with the Quran? No. So Shaykh, he brings in that it is strongly established that the month of Ramadan is the month of the Quran. Is it a month when Jibreel alayhi salam, he used to come to the Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam and revise, he used to revise the Quran with him once a year, and some of the narrations mentioned in his last year, he revised it twice that year with him. And the Shaykh, he highlighted a point here that he said that all it takes is for a person to have muraja'ah, to have revision and teaching with, is that it takes two people. How many of us are here are married? How many of us here have children? And how many of us sit down in and outside of the month of Ramadan and have this type of muraja'ah, this type of revising, this type of memorization with our families, with our children? This is something very, very important for us. A person doesn't just sit down and review by themselves. As the ulama say, the people that sit down and they review by themselves, they're people of mistakes. Because you don't know your mistakes. You don't have the proper understanding, the proper where to stop, where to go, where did I make this mistake? This is supposed to be a fatha instead of dhamma, and we continue perpetuating that. And in some places, it's kufr to make that mistake. Now, the Shaykh Hafidhullah Ta'ala, after again mentioning that the importance of this, he mentioned a hadith of Ibn Abbas radiyallahu anhu, where he said, when he talked about the actual sending down of the Quran, and he said, Quran kulluhu, that he mentioned that the entire Quran was sent down all at once to the lowest heavens during Ramadan, on Laylatul Qadr. Then when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wanted something to happen on earth, He would send down a portion of it until all of it was sent down. This point highlights to us that there are specific reasons why the sabab al-nuzul, right? The sabab al-nuzul, the reasons why the Quran was sent down. These ayat are supposed to be with us. They're supposed to be with us, a part of us. That many of us, we want the ajr of Surah Al-Baqarah, Ali Imran. We want that when we come on Yawm al-Qiyamah, we want those to be our companions. But how many of us spend time actually reflecting upon why these ayats were revealed? What is the purpose of these ayats being revealed? And many of those ayats are our foundational creed, and they have a reason why they were sent down. They were sent down to us so that we can be people who reflect, like this month of Ramadan. لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ, in hopes that we can be people who what? That we can be people of taqwa, people of true taqwa. And as the ulama they say, that taqwa is is the key of Jannah. Taqwa is the key of Jannah. In numerous amounts of places, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He mentions in the Quran that He talks about taqwa, relating it directly to Jannah. That if we ultimately want to be people of taqwa, we have to be people of the Quran. We can't just say we believe in the Quran and it's sitting at home collecting dust. We can't say, well, I go to the masjid to read the Quran. Well, alhamdulillah, there's barakah in that. There's ajr in that. But that's not the only place that Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, that's not what the companions, radiyallahu anhum ajma'een, where they recited the Quran, was only in the masjid. Then, and some of the ulama said, we have to check our intention. If I'm only reading the Quran in the masjid, does that mean that I'm sincerely doing it only for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Because the khuluwa, the seclusion, is a place where it shows your sincerity of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, so this month is extremely important for us to develop our relationship with the Quran, to push forward with our relationship. Maybe I can only read a quarter page a day. Maybe I can only read a line a day, 2 lines a day. But this is supposed to be a time period where many of the secular scholars, they say that it takes approximately 21 days to formulate a habit, for an action to become a habit. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He has given us 29, 30 days, right? For us to be able to cultivate ourselves. This is better than anything else. And from that is the Quran. The Quran is the direct means of cultivating ourselves. How many places that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has mentioned that He sent down the Quran shifa'a, that it is a mercy, it is a healing for mankind, it is a rahmah. How many different numerous amounts of places Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that this is for us? How is it that we can think that the month is going to be beneficial for us if we don't have that connection to the Quran? Everything else that we do in this month, fasting, giving zakah, being more generous, it all stems from the Quran. They say that the Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam was more generous in the month of Ramadan because of why? He had more time with the Quran. And this is something that formulated to the companions, to the tabi'in, the atba' tabi'in. And this is something for us to continue and to hold forward to, is that we really, really, really want a relationship with the Quran. We have to want it. We have to not just say, oh, this is going to happen. I need to say, I want it. The same way I want new shoes, the same way I want the flyers gear, the same way I'm saying I'm going to get this. If I'm not saying that I'm going to get this from the Quran, you're not getting nothing. And then this Ramadan is going to come and it's going to leave us in the same situation that it did, that we met, unfortunately. Except from what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grants tawfiq to. And that is more terrifying than anything else. Is that Ramadan came and we left in the same situation that we approached it. Now, in some of the advices that the Shaykh Hafidhahullah Ta'ala, he mentioned about what is our relationship with the Quran, is that there's a question that comes up quite often. Almost every single Ramadan, a person would ask the specific question, which is more virtuous? Is it more virtuous for a person to recite Quran with contemplation, or recite it without the same depth, yet increasing the amount of recitation in order to complete it a number of times and gain the reward of reciting? So what is commonly said is that this is something specific that I really appreciate from the Mashaykh of Kuwait. Allah Ta'ala. There are many Mashaykh from all over. Inshallah, Bidnillah, we'll have one Mashaykh from Kuwait here in 2 weeks. Bidnillah Ta'ala. Is that their situation is very similar to our situation here. Meaning, the things that happen, the approaches, the mentalities, the work, this, that, their situation is very, very relevant or closest to our situation here. And because of this, they're able to formulate answers and the mentality that really suits us. So the Shaykh Hafidhullah Ta'ala, he mentions about this, which is more rewarding, right? He said, actually, there's no conflict or contest between the two acts of worship that would make one ask which is more virtuous. He said the crux of this issue goes back to the reciter himself, and there are several different types of reciters. So what I knew before reading this book and before doing a little more depth into it, was that what is more commonly spread around is that it's better for a person, and Sheikh's going to address it, but we're just going to say before moving forward, is that it's better for a person to reflect over one verse than to read the entire Quran, than to read without understanding. But there's more to the situation than just that, because that doesn't fit everybody's lifestyle. And what does it actually mean to have this tadabbur of the ayah? No. The first type he mentions, the common people, which majority of us are, from the Ummah. People who are not able to contemplate or may not even be able to understand very many ayat at all. For these people, there's no doubt that the best thing for them to do is to recite a large amount of Quran. This type of reciting is suitable goal in and of itself for reciting. Brings about many rewards, as is found in the narration of the Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, where he mentioned, "La aqulu alif lam mim harfun, bal alif harfun wa lam harfun wa mim harfun." I do not say that alif lam mim is one letter or one wording. Rather, alif is a harf, is a letter, lam is a letter, and mim is a letter. Meaning, and from there was the reward. For each letter that is recited, it is 10 reward for those letters. So the Shaykh is showing us that there's different type of people and mentality, and we have to understand which one we are and what category of people we actually fall into. The second type, the scholars and students of knowledge. For these people, there are two ways to approach the Quran. The first way, the same way as the common people, that is seeking to a large amount of many rewards by reciting a large amount of the Quran and contemplating it multiple times. The second way is reciting it to study its meaning, contemplate them, and extract benefits from them. Each scholar or student of knowledge would approach this according to his own particular area of focus, which would enable him to excel in extracting certain benefits which another might not find. And that is blessing from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who gives that who he gives to whomever he wishes. Now, he reiterates the points. These two of reciting fall under the variety of deeds found within the Sharia, and both of them are virtuous deeds to engage in. There's no conflict between them such that one needs to find out which is more virtuous. Rather, there's a time and a place for each one, and that is connected to the state of the reciter himself. So let's go back and look at ourselves. Let's look around society. Let's look at what we have to deal with on a daily basis. We would hope that we can sit down. How many of us have really sat down and studied some type of usul tafsir to know what it entails? A madkhal, some type of introduction to usul tafsir. How many of us have sat down to sit down and reflect upon that, so we can know our boundaries that we have with the Quran? So many of us, we haven't done that. That's not our situation. And how many of us can say, well, I read this one ayah and I reflected all over it. And you look at them in a daydream. Some of the stuff is about the adhab. It's about the punishment of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and you drifted away. How can you say you contemplated? That's not, I don't want to say many of our situations, but we know our own situations, and how many of us have the ability to say we understand the Arabiya, to say that we understand the Arabic that the Quran came with. So for us, we really have to understand this, and we wonder why every single year we enter Ramadan. Some of us finish the Quran and nothing changed. Some of us read from the beginning to end and nothing has changed. Rather, Ramadan leaves us and many of us go back to perpetuating the same sins that we were upon before Ramadan began. Now, and talking about what is the status of the reciter who's reciting the Quran is important for us to understand our lifestyles. Some of us are parents. So some of us are parents. Some of us have to work. Some of us have to go to school. Some of us have to go to many different responsibilities that we have. When we sit down to recite the Quran, can we truly say that one verse that we said, that we had tadabbur, that we understood it, we contemplated over it, we understood it, we had understanding of it, and saying that is virtuous for us? Some of us, we fall into the other category where we have to read a plethora of the Quran that with the intention that every single harf that we are reciting from the huruf of the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that it is that we are hoping to gain this ajr. Sometimes we forget this point, that reciting the Quran, each letter is 10 rewards for us, and we forget that. So how is it innamal a'malu binniyat, right? Our reward is judged based upon our intention. It's a hasan, it's a restriction. Innama. That how many of us we sit down and we reflect upon Qul Huwallahu Ahad and say how many different letters they are inside of this, so that we can see how much reward that bi'idhnillahi we could be obtaining. So we can't, and then this brings to the other point of what we're saying, is that sometimes we don't have the time that we think we do, or the mentality. We think that we are saving the world, to say, and we're doing so much, and that amount of stress, it takes a toll on us. It takes a toll on each and every single one of us. For us, meaning working, going outside, trying to defend yourself from the filth that is out there every single way, right? Unfortunately, we are in a day and time, the weather is nice, so one day it's like 70, one day it's 40. Well, alhamdulillah, majority of us, we look forward to winter time because everybody's covered. Right? Now, astaghfirullah, na'udhu billah, now you got to worry about both parties, or how many of the parties they want to say they are, being naked. Everybody's naked now, right? Well, stop. But all of these different things take a hit to each and every single one of our souls, and we, to be able to sit down, right, and just sit down and say, I'm going to reflect. First, we have to remove all that filth from the head. All that stuff has to be gone. And then look at the ayah and say that we're going to truly contemplate on this. And this is not a discouragement. And the reason why I'm spending a little bit more time on this is because it's not something that is commonly or widely spread about. Majority of times, is sit down and it's better for you to reflect over that one verse than it is to do the other part, which is reciting of the Quran. And the beauty about reciting of the Quran also is that it builds your tongue. It builds your tongue with the ability to maneuver, to fit to fit to the tongue of the Arabic language. Both of them are virtuous. Both of them are virtuous, as the Shaykh Habibullah Ta'ala is highlighting and really understanding on. Now, is that both of them are virtuous, and that we should look and evaluate our situation. Sometimes, again, what we're saying is that we set the bar a little too high, and we don't evaluate our own status and can we actually reach that bar. I want to get up on a pull-up bar, but I can't even reach it. I want to do a muscle up, but I can't even grab the bar. I can't even pull myself up, and then I think that I'm gonna get over it. It's not gonna happen. So we have to look at our situation and see, can I actually grab that bar? And then can I go beyond that bar? Now, the Sheikh said, having said that, there is no question that understanding something is better than not understanding. Following from that, some scholars have illustrated the situation by saying that a person who reads a single surah with contemplation is like someone who gave a precious jewel in sadaqah, in charity, while a person who reads the entire Quran without contemplation is like someone who gave a lot of money in charity, though not quite reaching the same amount as the first person gave. And one of the things I wanted to highlight again is the Sheikh said that he mentioned that some of the other scholars have illustrated this. Meaning this is not the first Sheikh to say this. This is not the first one of the, he just came into something, he said something, and no. This has been said before, Wallah alhamd. Okay? So just saying that to somebody saying like, okay, maybe this is like myself, when the first time I came across this, I was like, I never heard nothing like this before, I'm not sure. You know? And there are many different proofs, many different ayats for reading a plethora of the Quran and how the ulama and their position towards it. And again, we're not discouraging anybody from learning and pushing forward to contemplate the ayats of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We're just trying to promote our understanding so that we can have the best Ramadan. Ramadan is what, 14 days away, 15 days away, give or take, something like that. Bismillah. Allahumma balighna Ramadan. I mean, that in 2 weeks, we're not going to learn the Arabic language, we're not going to study the usul, we're not going to memorize everything that's going to happen. So we have to be able to really conduct ourselves to what's appropriate for us. And you see, the virtue of this is the Shaykh is mentioning that both of them are virtuous. Both of them have a great reward. That if we're not able to do one, does that mean that we just leave it off in totality? Because that's what ends up happening. There's a lot of us, we end up falling short because we're like, well, I don't really understand it anyway, so what's the point of me reading it? What's the point of me moving forward like this? Wallah alhamd, there's a great virtue in reading a plethora of the Quran, and it puts barakah in our time. Shaykh Sulaiman Ruhaili, Habibullah Ta'ala, he mentioned that we shouldn't start our day unless we have started it with some type of Quran. Because starting the day with Quran will exercise the mind to be able to have a blessed day to say, to make that day blessed. Meaning that you will have protection because your mindset has already started with the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that is that we will be able to protect ourselves because we started with the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that what we were able to formulate is a day that will be based upon that. So when we go outside and we see something, we're able to deflect it because we already started with the recitation of the Quran. The Shaykh Habibullah Ta'ala, he mentioned a few issues. And this we're gonna close with this one, bismillah, is that he said there are a few issues related to reciting the Quran during the month of Ramadan which should be mentioned. Issue number one, a person ought to evaluate himself, as not all people are the same when it comes to worship. It is a missed opportunity to let Ramadan come and go without contemplating one full reading of the Quran. Completing the Quran in Ramadan is a sunnah which Jibreel alayhi salatu wasalam established by reviewing the Quran with the Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam during the month of Ramadan. And has been a long-standing practice of the Muslims ever since the time of the Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam. You may have noticed that many people are eagerly engaged in good deeds during the first part of Ramadan, including the recitation of the Quran, but then how quickly do they lose stream after just a few days, and you see them being too lazy to do those deeds. Because of that, for anyone who knows this to be his habit, then the most fitting thing for him to do is to set himself a reading schedule and set a pace of 1 juz per day. Doing so, one will complete the Quran once during this month of Ramadan. What we want to just show is that many of us haven't studied the Quran with a teacher. Wallah alhamd, we have teachers here on a regular basis all year long. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless them. The best of us, right? There's those who have learned the Quran and they teach it. They're the best of us. Khayrukum, right? And they're here on a regular basis. How many of us go and ask them of a portion of Quran that I should be reading on a regular basis? A juz a day is a lot. A juz a day, for somebody that's not reading a juz a day, is a lot. And a juz, people look at juz amma because we hear it constantly. We think that we can recite the entire Quran like that. It's not like that. You get to the 10th juz, it's hard to get through one surah. You try reading Surah Al-Ahzab in the totality from beginning to end. Our tongues are not formulated to the Quran because we don't read it on a regular basis. So because of that, one of the issues that many of us we fall into is that we start off strong because we start off with Surah Al-Baqarah. And wallah alhamd, and some of the mufassirin, they talk about Surah Al-Baqarah, even though it's lengthy, it's easy. It's easy to recite, easy words, easy. Everything there's some difficulties in it, but majority of it is easy for the most part. So now you look at that, you look at Surah Ali Imran, you get to Surah Nisa, you're in a little bit of trouble, right? Your amounts aren't formulated to the ahkam, the rulings, all of these different things that come inside there is troubling. So majority of us fall into this portion right now. And then what do? I'm just going to skip. I'm going to try, I can't finish this surah, so it's either we go in two directions. We either stop doing it in totality, or we lose our motivation and we just like, okay, I'm going to skip this, I'm going to go this, and then, you know what, I'm just going to recite this. And before we realize it, we're not reciting anything because we skip, and we haven't recited. So it's best for us to spend this time now acclimating our tongues, our mouth to this recitation. And this is one of the benefits of having this plethora of recitation, right? Juz Amma is a little bit easy. Juz Tabarak, we're used to hearing this. Juz Qad Sami'a, we're used to hearing it, and maybe we memorize it. But once we start going a little bit, dwelling in it, it becomes difficult. And this is how a lot of us lose our vigor throughout that time. And so what we should be doing is, wallah alhamd, we have our imam, we have our Quran teachers, we should be going up to them and asking them, how much Quran? Again, this is something that we're reflecting to each and every single one of our situation. This is something that we have to realize, that our situation is unique. Meaning, my situation is different from yours and yours and yours and everyone else. But this is the benefit of having teachers and leaders, people who have studied the Quran in depth. Not everyone learned the Quran the same way. The Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam taught different companions, different riwayat that we have. Right? Some of the companions, they were known for different riwayat. Some were Hafsah, Asim, where do these qira'ah relate back to? Right? Some of them then, Abu Bakr, why do we recite Hafs? Is another reason why we should look at our relationship with the Quran, because we don't even know why, many of us don't even know who from the Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam that we learned Hafs from, that we learned Shaykh Ibrahim, Habibullah Ta'ala, he recites in Warsh quite frequently, right? Who are from the companions that this was their way of reciting, or they learned from the Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Now, and we don't want to run out of steam in the beginning portion of Ramadan. We want to be able to last the entirety of Ramadan. So being able to sit down with somebody and measure out how much Quran can I really formulate myself with is a benefit for us. And we should have done that last year, but we should at least start today. Right? We have Sheikh Ahmed, Habibullah Ta'ala, that he is proficient, mashallah ta'ala. Well, you barik fihi. And we should sit down with him. None of us have an excuse. We have time. We have a lot of time. Whether or not we want to really come to the truth about that, but we have a lot of time. And it doesn't take a long time to come up with a reading schedule. Because of that, for anyone who knows this to be his habit, and it is most befitting thing for him to do is to set himself in a reading schedule. Now, and if we want to continue now, so developing this habit, and if one were to continue on this schedule throughout all the months of the year, that is something possible, and this is some ultimately revolves around one's resolve and determination. If a Muslim were to set a rate of reading 4 pages for each of the 5 daily prayer time, then he would complete 20 pages each day, which is equal to a full juz in the Mus'haf that are printed with 15 lines per page, like the Medina Mus'haf. I'm smiling because it's not many people really address that situation, as this is also one of the Sheikh's his field of study is Quran. So the thing is, the Musahif are printed differently depending where they're printed from, right? Who wrote it, and all of these different things. If you look into the first page in the Medina book, I think in the Mus'haf of Medina, they had somebody rewrite it like a year or two. They handwrite it, and then they mass it printed. Everything is handwritten now. And if you look at other Musahif, they're 12 lines. Some of them are 10 lines. I think the Indo-Paki one, the bluish, purplish, whatever color it is, that one's like 10 lines and stuff like that. So having understanding of what it is that you're actually looking at will be able to be a benefit to how much you're actually able to read and how much you need to read to finish that juz and to be able to finish the Quran. By following this method, one would be considered in this good deed without any gaps, as the Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, أحب الأعمال إلى الله أدوامها وإن قل. That the most beloved deeds to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala are the most consistent ones, even if they are small. So it doesn't matter that we are only able to finish a certain amount of the Quran. Our goal is to finish the Quran throughout the entire, every 30 days. As Shaykh bin Baz, rahimahullah ta'ala, he said about that the believer, 30 days shouldn't elapse without finishing the Quran. Some say 60, some say 90, but Shaykh bin Baz, rahimahullah ta'ala, is that if we set this and make this our standard of what we are going to do, it will only get better. So our relationship with the Quran, a big part of it is qira'ah, is recitation, and learning to recite it appropriately, right? Formulating ourselves, our tongues, our mouths, all of these different things, so that we can have this great reward b'idhnillahi ta'ala. In closing, b'idhnillah, is that we should have a measured amount of Quran that we're going to recite on a daily basis. Wallah alhamd, again, we have them here. It's not strange. It's not absent, wallah alhamd, from the masjid. They're proficient. Allah yubarik fihim. We're not praising them of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but they're there and we're not taking advantage of them. Yeah, we're not. They are there and we're not taking advantage of them. There are many different Quran teachers all around that have studied it with a teacher, and their benefits are there for us to take, and we have to take advantage of it. And if we're not taking advantage of it, can we say we truly have a relationship with the Quran? Because a relationship is always you want it to get better. A marriage, the longevity of the marriage lasts based upon what? Continuously doing, either being repetitive and being on the same level, or doing things differently and increasing in that, right? So we have to develop a strong relationship with the Quran, one that will last throughout Ramadan and after Ramadan. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make the Quran nur fi sudurina, light within our hearts. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make it the springtime of our chests. Ameen. سبحانك اللهم أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. بارك الله فيك.
I'd like to thank our brother Nadir, mashallah, for that very beneficial reminder, having a relationship with the Quran, with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by way of reciting the Quran. It's very important that the believers focus on the recitation of the Quran, especially during the times that are favorable with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as there are certain times and certain places where the rewards are multiplied and doubled. And no one knows how much reward that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives for the one who recites the Quran during the month of Ramadan. No one knows. However, it's important that the Quran is recited and tadabburan, contemplated over, tilawatan, recited, يعني تصديقا بما فيه, believing in every single thing that is in the Quran and following all of its commandments and staying away from all of its prohibitions. It's the kalam Allah. And for the one who recites the Quran and has a relationship with Allah, they are considered to be Ahlullah. Ahlul Quran, Ahlullah. The people of the Quran are the people of Allah Azza wa Jal. Bismillah, wa salatu wa salamu ala Rasulillah. Inshallah ta'ala, we're going to give a brief talk about the importance of du'a, supplication to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. As in the month of Ramadan, you have salat, you have sadaqah, you have as-siyam, and you have du'a. Now, as the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he said, "Man qama Ramadan imanan muhtisab, غفر له ما تقدم من ذنبه." Whomsoever prays during the month of Ramadan with iman. And this iman is belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and ihtisab, only expecting the reward from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will forgive you of your previous sins. So Ramadan is a blessed month. It is a month that has a lot of benefit for the believers, for those who really want to partake in its benefits, right? So that which is a part of the month of Ramadan whereby a person can get close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is supplication. It's very important. During the month of Ramadan, majority of the masajids are full, especially the first 10 nights. Now, and it somewhat dwindles down into the last third of the month of Ramadan where everybody's trying to catch Laylatul Qadr. You see the women, the children, everybody comes out. MashaAllah, it's beautiful. And the Imam, when he recites after he finished reciting and he's on al-witr, he makes what is called al-qunut. And he says, what? Allahumma hdina fi man hadayt, wa afina fi man afayt, wa tawallana fi man tawallayt. He says the first 5 sentences whereby he is supplicating to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is dua. So there's a certain mannerism that the believer must have. When the Imam makes these dua, what do we do? What do we do? So we would like to talk about the importance of dua. We would like to talk about ways whereby dua is not rejected. And this is important. We don't want our supplication to be rejected. We want our supplication to be accepted by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we want to understand when the Imam is not making dua, what do we say? What do we say? الدعاء من أجل العبادات وأفضل القربات التي يتقرب بها العبد إلى رب عز وجل. Supplication is from amongst the most noble acts of worship and the best forms of getting close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. By way of dua, a person can relieve some harm that was said for him. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He accepts this person and He responds to the person who's oppressed. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, يرفع البلاء, He lifts bala, trials and tribulations. نعم. ويقضي الحاجات, and He fulfills whatever needs that a person who supplicates to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala needs. ويعين على طاعات, and He aids a person upon obedience to Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala. Now, ولذلك كان النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم يعلم أصحابه كيفية الدعاء. And for this reason, the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم, he educated and he taught the Sahaba how to make dua. He educated and he taught the Sahaba how to make dua. And this is very important. Every single thing that we do is based upon knowledge. It's based upon the teachings of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Now, it's very important. In dua, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he talks عن أبي سعيد أن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم قال ما من مسلم يدعو بدعوة ليس فيها إثم ولا قطيعة رحم إلا أعطاه الله بها إحدى ثلاث إما أن تعجل له دعوته وإما أن يدخرها له في الآخرة وإما أن يصرف عنه من السوء مثله. The Prophet ﷺ, he said in the hadith is collected by Imam Ahmed that there is not a Muslim who supplicates to Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala with a supplication except in this supplication there is nothing that's haram. ليس فيها إثم. You're not supplicating for something that's haram. You're not asking Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala to give you the strength to rob somebody or to cheat somebody or to lie to somebody, right? There's no haram in the dua whatsoever, right? وَلَا قَطِيعَةَ رَحْمٍ. And in the dua, there is no severing the ties of kinship. This is very important, right? When a person makes dua, and sometimes family members, they become upset with other family members and they make dua against your family member, against your brother, your father, your cousin, your aunt, your nephew. They make dua against them, right? This dua right here, as the Prophet ﷺ said, if this dua doesn't have this, which indicates that if it does have it, your dua is not going to be accepted. If it has sin in it, if it has severed the ties of kinship, then your dua is not going to accept it. If it doesn't, إِلَّا أَعْطَاهُ اللَّهُ بِهَا إِحْدَى ثَلَاثٍ, except that Allah Ta'ala will grant him one of three things. Either he's going to rush in answering his dua, or either Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to save that supplication for Yawm al-Akhirah, for the day standing for Allah, the hereafter. Now, or Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to take it and he's going to utilize it to remove something similar, some similar harm that was written for this individual. Now, this is very important. As the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said, لَيْسَ شَيْءٌ أَكْرَمُ عَلَى اللَّهِ تَعَالَى مِنَ الدُّعَاءِ. There is nothing more honorable with Allah than supplicating to Allah. There's nothing more honorable than this. Nothing more honorable whatsoever. In dua, and this is very important. In dua is to who? It is to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It is to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah ta'ala, he says, فَاتُوا اللَّهَ مُخْلِصِينَ لَهُ الدِّينَ. Yani, call upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sincerely and Allah ta'ala alone. Meaning we have to make sure that our dua is only for Allah. It is not to Allah along with something else. It is sincerely for Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala. Now, and in this dua, there are two types of dua. Two types of dua. Anybody wants to answer? Anybody knows one of them? Dua al-ibadah. Dua al-ibadah. There's dua al-ibadah. This is one of the categories of supplication. It is called the supplication or the invocation of worship. What does it mean?
When one is praying, for example, when one is making salah, this is the dua of ibadah.
Now, this is a form of dua al-ibadah. And ibadah, anybody can help me out. What is ibadah? Al-ibadah. Al-ibadah can be translated as worship, right? So, what are some examples of worship? Yes.
Du'a.
Dua. That's a good one. Give me some other examples of worship.
Giving charity.
Giving charity is ibadah. What else? Removing something harmful off of the road. Now, give me something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala it is. Now, يعني this is a part of a person's إيمان وإماتة الأذى عن الطريق يعني الإيمان بضع وستون شعبة أعلاها كلمة لا إله إلا الله. Iman has 60 something levels. The highest level is the statement لا إله إلا الله وأدناها إماتة الأذى عن الطريق. The lowest level is the removing something harmful from the road. والحياة شعبة من الإيمان, and likewise حياة, modesty, is a branch of Iman. Give me some. What about siyam? What about fasting? Nah, fasting is ibadah. What about zakat? You mentioned sadaqah. Nah. What about kalimat al-tayyib? A good word, something like this. Right? What else? Hajj. Barakallahu feek. Hajj. All of these are actions of ibadah. And Du'a and ibadah, basically this covers acts of worships in the sense when you perform any act of worship, whether it is inward actions, right? What does that mean, inward actions? Actions of the heart, or outward actions. What does that mean?
That's apparent.
Actions of the limbs. Barakallahu feek. Verbal or non-verbal. This is ibadah. Ismun jami'un لكل ما يحبه الله ويرضاه من الأعمال والأقوال ظاهرة وباطنة. العبادة consists of any single thing that has been legislated by which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves. By which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves. لكل ما يحبه الله, Allah loves ويرضاه, and He is pleased with. من الأقوال, from both speech, whether it's verbal or non-verbal speech, والأفعال, and action. ظاهرة, apparent actions like that which you do with your body limbs, like salat, zakat, hajj, stuff like this. ظاهرة وباطنة, actions of the heart. Actions of the heart consist of what? Love for Allah, fear of Allah, hope for Allah. These are actions of the heart, whereby a person can get close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with. Right? You're following me on this. So this right here is Du'a al-Ibadah. Every type of action that you do that has been legislated, it has to have Du'a al-Ibadah in it. This is one of the forms. Right? We got that? What is the other type? Du'a al-Mas'ala. Barakallahu feek, Abu Bakr. Du'a al-Mas'ala. Du'a al-Mas'ala is explicit requests made to Allah wa ta'ala. And this right here, a person can say, oh Allah, forgive me. Oh Allah, have mercy upon me. Oh Allah, guide me. Oh Allah, grant me righteous or pious children. So on and so forth. This right here is called the invocation of need. Du'a al-Mas'ala, or some call it Du'a al-Talab, whereby you request something from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You make a request from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Tayyib? What are the two categories or types of dua? We just went over it. Dua, ibadah, and dua al-mas'ala. Barakallahu feek. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He said, وَقَالَ رَبُّكُمْ إِدْعُونِي أَسْتَجِبْ لَكُمْ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He said, ask of me, I will respond to your invocation. And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said, "Ad-du'a huwa al-ibadah." Supplication is worship itself. Supplication is worship itself. Now, we have one of the statements of one of the people of the past, Imam Abdullah bin Shishiyya, rahimahullah ta'ala, anhu. He said, تذكرت ما جمع الخير فإذا خير كثير. He said, I wondered and I contemplated what gathers all good. تذكرت, يعني what gathers all good. So he said, good comes in many forms. Now, he said, الخير كثير. Good comes in many forms. You have a song, you have a salat, you have a zakat, you have many things that you can do. وَإِذَا هُوَ فِي يَدِ اللَّهِ عَزَّ وَجَلَّ. And all of this is in the hands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَإِذَا أَنْتَ لَا تَقْدِرُ عَلَى مَا في يد الله عز وجل إلا أن تسأله فيعطيك فإذا جمعنا خير الدعاء. He said, and this is a very powerful statement. He said, I realized that good comes in many forms, prayer, fasting, and so on and so forth. All of this is in the hands of Allah. Any act of good is in the hands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So he said, I came to the realization that if you are not able to attain, in order for you to attain what is in the hands of Allah, what must you do? If you want what Allah ta'ala has, what must you do? You must ask Him. You must ask Him. So dua is what gathers all good. If a person wants good, we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for it. Because Allah ta'ala, He's capable of doing any and everything. There's nothing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can't do. He has no limitations. He can give you anything. He can do anything for you. So what gathers all good is your supplication to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because all of good is controlled and in the hands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, likewise, Ibn Qayyim rahimahullah ta'ala, he said, Miftah kulli khayr ad-du'a. The key to every good is in ad-du'a. والافتقار والصدق واللجاء والرغبة والرهبة إليه. يعني seeking nearness to Allah, being truthful, turning to Allah, having awe and having fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. فمتى أعطي العبد هذا المفتاح, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or when this abd is giving the key, as the key to all good is dua. When the abd is given the key, and meaning the key is dua, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala intends good for this servant of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَمَتَى أَضَلَّهُ, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not giving this abd the key, meaning this abd is not giving the ability to make dua to Allah wa ta'ala, بَقِيَ بَابُ الْخَيْرِ, then the door of good is just there. And it is not open for him. He's deprived. He doesn't have the opportunity to even receive the key to open the door to get what is good for them. And we have to understand, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He's the one that gives this key to the abd. And when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives you the key to making dua to Him and asking Him, then He wants good for you. If we have an opportunity to make dua to Allah, we have to take that opportunity. We'd like to talk now about some very important factors that will aid in helping us get our dua answered. The first is حضور القلب. When a person, he has his heart in the supplication itself. His heart is present. His mind is present. He is focused, right? He's just not saying some words that's rolling off of his tongue and he's saying Ameen afterwards. He's really focused on what he's asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. عن أبي هريرة رضي الله تعالى عنه قال قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم ادعوا الله وأنتم موقنون بالإجابة واعلموا أن الله لا يستجيب دعاء من قلب غافل لاهٍ. The Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم, he said, call upon Allah, supplicate to Allah, وأنتم موقنون بالإجابة, while you have certainty that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to answer your supplication. Right? We must have certainty. And what did the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said that Allah tabarak wa ta'ala do? For any sincere supplicant who supplicates to Him, He's going to do one of three things, right? He's going to either rush and give him what he requests, or He's going to save it for Yawm al-Akhirah, the hereafter, or He's going to replace that supplication with something similar to reward or some type of harm for him, right? So all dua, sincere supplication, is answered, right? So when we make dua, we must have certainty first and foremost that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala hears and He answers our supplication. ادعوا ربكم وأنتم موقنون بالإجابة. Call upon Allah, supplicate to Allah while you have certainty that Allah tabarak wa ta'ala is going to answer your supplication. And know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He does not answer, He does not respond to a supplication from the heart that is heedless, occupied with play. He doesn't answer that dua. The heart that is heedless, Allah Ta'ala, He does not answer the supplication. For if we want our dua to be answered, our heart must be present. حضور القلب. Our hearts must be present. This is very important. The second factor that would aid in our dua, our supplications being answered, أوقات الإجابة الدعاء, the times that supplications are normally answered. Anyone know any times? No.
I wanted to ask, go back to something if you don't mind.
تفضل.
So Yaqeen is a stipulation to dealing with the dua being answered.
Yes.
So certainty has to be a stipulation.
بارك الله فيك. جزاك الله خير. أوقات الإجابة الدعاء. The times, Abu Bakr. What time is it now? After Asr? This one of the times, yes.
Raining.
When it's raining, nah, it's a hadith.
The last third of the night.
The last third, barakallahu feek.
Between the
Adhan and the Iqam, that's what you want to say.
and the Iqam.
Barakallahu feek. Nah. When you're in sujood, nah. When you're traveling, subhanallah. Yeah, to go, man. MashaAllah. عن أبي هريرة رضي الله تعالى عنه قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم 3 دعوات مستجاب لهن لا شك فيهن دعوة المظلوم. The Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم, he said that there are 3 supplications that are always answered, لا شك, there's no doubt whatsoever about it. Now, the first, دعوة المظلوم. This is not the shahid, but we're talking about the supplication of the oppressed. ودعوة المسافر, the one who supplicates while he is on a journey. Who said that? Nah, one of your brothers said that. That's the shahid. When a person, he's on a journey. وَدَعْوَةِ الْوَالِدِ لِوَلَدِهِ, and the supplication made by the parent for his child. This is important. This is important. The Prophet ﷺ said, لَا شَكَّ فِيهِنَّ. It's أخرجه Ibn Majah في سننه. There's no doubt whatsoever about it. Now, the supplication of the oppressed, the supplication of the one who's on a journey, and the supplication for a parent to a child or for his child. This is very important. Most of us here are parents. We have to make children da'wah, supplication for our children. This is very important. Don't leave them out. Don't leave them out. Now, also عن أبي هريرة رضي الله تعالى عنه أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم قال إن في جمعة ساعة لا يوافقها عبد مسلم يسأل الله عز وجل فيها خيرا إلا أعطاه إياه وهي بعد العصر. Now, the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم said, indeed, on the day of Jumu'ah, there is an hour whereby the abd, he supplicates and asks Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala for good, except that Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala grants him this. The Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said it is after Asr. After Asr, Yawm al-Jumu'ah. This right here is min awqat ijabat al-du'a, the times whereby dua is answered. Likewise, we have a hadith, Anas ibn Malik, radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم لا يرد الدعاء بين الآذان والإقامة. Anas ibn Malik, he said that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, dua, supplication, is not rejected between the adhan and the iqamah. Barakallahu feek. Make your dua between the adhan and the iqamah. وعن أبي هريرة رضي الله تعالى عنه قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم أقرب ما يكون العبد من ربه وهو ساجد فكثر الدعاء. The Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم, he said that the abd, the closest that he is to his Lord is when he is in sujood. وساجد فكثر الدعاء. So increase your supplications. Which one of you said this? بارك الله فيك جزاك الله خير. وعن ابن عباس رضي الله تعالى عنه عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم أنه قال ألا وإني نهيت أن أقرأ القرآن راكيا أو ساجدا فأما الركوع فعظموه فيه الرب عز وجل وأما السجود فاجتهدوا في الدعاء. And this right here coincides with the hadith that we just read. Ibn Abbas radiallahu ta'ala anhu, he said that the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he said, I have been prohibited to recite Quran while in the state of ruku' and sujood. Not supposed to recite Quran during those two positions, right? فَأَمَا الرُّكُوعُ فَعَظِّمُوهُ. When a person is in ruku', make ta'azim of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with regards to your supplication. Now, وَأَمَّا السُّجُودُ. As for when a person is in sajda, فَاجْتَهِدُوا فِي الدُّعَاءِ. Strive, increase your dua to Allah tabarak wa ta'ala. Let me say this. One of the things that Sheikh Abdul Muhsin, Sheikh Abdul Razak, Ibn Abdul Muhsin al-Abad, he was praying. He wasn't leading the salah. He was praying as a regular musalli, praying behind the imam. And when the imam came out of sujood, everybody came out of sujood and they were in sitting for tashahhud. But the person praying next to him, this is a beautiful story. The person praying next to him, he stayed in sujood. He wanted to get as much dua in as possible. He wanted to get that dua in. So he stayed in that position. So when the salat was over, eventually he came up. When the salat was over, Sheikh Abdul Razak, Hafidahullah, may Allah Ta'ala preserve him as he is one of the scholars of our time. May Allah Ta'ala preserve him. Ameen. And his father. Ameen. His father Alam. He asked, why did you do that? So this person's response was basically what we've been reading, the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Right? He had it down there. He said, I'm in sujood. I want to increase my dua. I wasn't finished. So the Shaykh, he says, this is not befitting. He said, the Imams, إِنَّمَا بُعِثَ الْإِمَامِ لِيُؤْتَمَّ بِهِ. The Imams have been deputed to be followed. You have to follow the Imam. Right? So, based upon this, we have to understand one and two things. The Imam, he can give a little more time for those who are in sujood to get some dua in. And likewise, when the Imam moves, we have to move. We don't stay behind because the Imam has been deputed to be followed. We have to follow the Imam. Now, we have to follow the Imam. We don't stay behind and continue. And inshallah, if our hearts, especially if our hearts are there, you think Allah Ta'ala don't know what's in your heart, what you wanted to do, the niyyah that you had, the dua that you wanted to supplicate to Allah, you're rewarded for your intentions. And you will receive the reward for making the dua, and Allah Ta'ala will bless you with that as well. Now, so, barakallahu feekum, this is the second point that we wanted to go over, and y'all basically answered them all. The third factor with regards to getting your dua, your supplication answered, tadarru'an wa khufya, yani having humility, meekness, and khufya, being silent. This is very important. Allah Ta'ala, he says in his book, ادعوا ربكم تضرعا وخفية إنه لا يحب المعتدين ولا تفسدوا في الأرض بعد إصلاحها وادعوه خوفا وطمعا إن رحمة الله قريب من المحسنين. Allah Ta'ala, he says, invoke your Lord with humility and in secret. These are two characteristics or two factors that will help and aid getting your supplication answered. The first is humility and in secrecy. Secret. What is meant by secret? Meaning you're not shouting out of your lungs. Humility, you have to be humble and standing before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You have to be humble with humility. Now, he likes not the aggressors or the transgressors. And do not do mischief in the earth after islahiha, after order has been set. And invoke Allah with fear and hope. This is something we're going to talk about, inshallah, when we invoke Allah with fear and hope. Surely Allah's mercy is near the good doers. Now, this is very important. When we stand before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we are standing before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and we are invoking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as we are in need. We are in need of the aid of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we're going to do this tadarru'an, with humility or khufya. We're not going to shout out of our lungs and let everybody know what we are asking Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala. We're not doing this. We're not doing this, right? It protects an individual from riyah as well, from wanting to be seen or wanting to be heard. This is very important. إن الله لا يحب المعتدين. Allah Ta'ala, He likes not or He loves not those who transgress. So we see the one who raises his voice, he could be from amongst the people who are transgressing the bounds. نعم تجتنب الاعتداء في الدعاء فإنه سبحانه وتعالى لا يحب الاعتداء في الدعاء. نعم. We have a hadith. Abdullah ibn Mughaffal سمع ابنه يقول اللهم إني أسألك القصر الأبيض عن يمين الجنة وإذا دخلتها فقال أي بني سل الله الجنة تعوذ به من النار فإني سمعت رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم يقول إنه سيكون في هذه الأمة قوم يعتدون في طهور والدعاء. This is important. This is one of the ways a person can transgress with regards to his supplication to Allah Ta'ala. Abdullah ibn Mughaffal heard his son making dua to Allah Ta'ala, right? And this is collected in the Sunan of Abu Dawud. His son, he supplicated to Allah. He said, "Oh Allah, I ask you for a white palace on the right side of paradise." He said he wanted a white palace on the right side of paradise. Now, when I entered, when the father came and he said, "Oh son, ask Allah for paradise and seek refuge from Allah Ta'ala from the hellfire." He's advising his son. He said, "For indeed I heard the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, he said, in this people, there will be some people who will transgress the limits when it comes to purification and when it comes to supplication." This is transgressing the limits. You want Jannah? Ask for Jannah. Don't ask for a big white palace on the side of Jannah and so on and so forth. Ask for Jannah. And what does this mean, transgress the limits when it comes to purification? What does that mean? A big problem that many of us see every time we go downstairs in the wudu station. Brothers got the water on full blast. Full blast, not even using it. Wasting water. Wasting water. Because water, subhanAllah, you have people who don't have water in some places of the earth. It's transgressing the limits when it comes to al-wudu. Now, so this right here, my brothers, tadarru'an wa khufya, with humility to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and not raising your voice. This is the third factor we would like to talk about. We talked about. The fourth is, and this is very important, istiqbalul qibla, facing the qibla when we supplicate to Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala. Abdullah ibn Zayd al-Ansari أخبره أن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم خرج إلى المصلى يصلي ولما دعا أو أراد أن يدعو استقبل القبلة وحوله رداءه. The Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم has narrated by Abdullah ibn Zayd al-Ansari when he went towards the musalla in order to offer al-istisqa. Now, al-istisqa is prayer for rain. And we have very different narrations for this particular hadith. We have different narrations. Some of the narrations say a man, he entered the masjid and the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was on the minbar. He was giving a khutbah, and the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he heard the man complains, "Ya Rasulullah, you're giving a khutbah when our farms are dried up, we have no rain." So the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he went down and he turned towards the qibla and he made dua, he made an istisqa. An istisqa is supplication for rain. Supplication for rain. Now, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, one of the things that he did, he faced the qibla. He faced the qibla and he turned his back, his cloak, inside out. Now, this is one narration. You have many different narrations. Sometimes the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he turned towards the qibla and his back was facing towards the qibla. And then he turned towards the qibla. You have very different narrations. However, one of the things that's very important is when you make supplication, from ways of getting your dua answered is that you what? You face the Qibla. You face the Qibla. In another narration, the Prophet ﷺ, he said, Istaqbal al-nas, Allahumma aghithna. Oh Allah, aid us, send us aid and help with rain. Allahumma aghithna, Allahumma aghithna. He said this 3 times. And this is also, we're not mentioning it as one of our factors, but when you make supplications, you do it in 3s. You do it in 3s. As indicated in this particular hadith, the Prophet ﷺ said, Allahumma aghithna, Allahumma aghithna, Allahumma aghithna. Na'am. وَلَمْ يَنْصَرِفْ إِلَى الْقِبْلَةِ. He didn't turn towards the Qibla at this particular time. نعم. Then بعد صلاة الجمعة he said اللهم أغثنا بأن ذلك يقصد به الغوث يعني لمن وقع في الشدة. نعم. وهو المطر. يعني الغوث, the Prophet ﷺ was asking for aid, he was asking for water, he was asking for rain. He was asking for rain. This is one of the ways whereby a person supplication will be answered when supplicating to Allah Ta'ala and he turned towards the Qibla. There's a lot of fawaid on this. We're not going to go over all of this with regards to facing the Qibla. This is very important. You know, when a person wants to supplicate to Allah, subhanAllah, just find out where the Qibla is and turn to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and supplicate to Allah. The fifth point is a person being upon tahara, being upon purification. عن المهاجر ابن قنفف أنه أتى النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم وهو يبول فسلم عليه فلم يرد عليه حتى توضأ ثم اعتذر إليه فقال إني كرهت أن أذكر الله عز وجل إلا على طهر أو على طهارة. One of the companions, Muhajir ibn Qunfuf, he came to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam وهو يبول, he was urinating, right? He see the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, so what did he do? He gave salams. What is as-salam? As-salam, as-salam. Nah, barakallahu fi. He answered it in Arabic and he answered it the way. As-salam is, giving salams is dua. Now, giving salams is making dua for an individual.
Right.
You're making dua for an individual. So, what did the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam say? He didn't say anything to him. He didn't say anything. He did not respond to his salams, right? So, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when he finished, what did he do? He performed al-wudu. After he finished urinating, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he performed ablution. He performed al-wudu. And then he went to him, he said, Atadhar. He said, pardon me. He said, I dislike remembering Allah except while I'm in a state of purification. It's very important. When a person wants to stand before Allah, he wants his dua to be answered. One of the ways that's going to aid in a person getting his supplication answered, being in his state of tahara. Now, the sixth point, رفع اليدين حال الدعاء. When a person, he raises his hands to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We have the hadith عن سلمان رضي الله تعالى عنه. قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم إن ربكم حي كريم يستحيي من عبده إذا رفع إليه يديه أن يردهما صفرا. Salman al-Farisi, one of the well-known companions of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said, indeed your Lord is hayy. He's modest, kareem. He's generous. He said, when a man raises his hands to him in dua, he feels too shy to return him or to not answer his dua, to not give him anything from his supplication. He's too shy to return his dua sifran, without anything granting him. Nah? So when a person wants to make dua, what do? We raise our hands. But He raised his hands. I know what he's going to say. I know what he's thinking. Now, it is very important with regards to raising hands, ikhwah. Raising the hands, ikhwah, is definitely, without a doubt, one of the ways in which du'a is accepted. What's that? It's time for the salah? After this 6 point, we're going to talk about this 6 point because we don't want to leave the people in suspense. Now, Sheikh Muhammad ibn Salih al-Uthaymeen, Sheikhuna, alayhi salatu, نعم. He said, وإذا كان الدعاء من العبادات فالعبادات تتوقف مشروعيتها على ورود الشرع بها في جنسها ونوعها وقدرها وهيئها ووقتها ومكانها وسببها. He said, dua is from the legislative forms getting close to Allah Ta'ala. So with regards to anything that we talked about, what is ibadah? Ibadah, acts of worship. We talked about this earlier. Every act of worship must be legislated and it must conform to 6 things. Every act of worship must conform to or be in accordance with the Sharia, first and foremost. It must be in accordance with reasons. It must be in accordance with the type, its nature, its amount, its how, its timing, and where it's done. It's very important. SubhanAllah. We could talk about this for a whole lectures. But one of the things that we would just like to tell the ikhwah and the akhawat is that raising the hands, when we see people raising hands, there are some places where the Prophet ﷺ raised his hand. He raised his hand. And then there are some places where the Prophet ﷺ, he made dua and he didn't raise his hand. So we see from that it's not best to raise your hand where the Prophet ﷺ made dua, raise your hands during those places, because the Prophet ﷺ did not raise his hands like right after the salat. Right after the salat. What did the Prophet ﷺ do? What does he do after, or what is his sunnah after the salat? Nah, dhikr, right? Give me some. He would say, Allahu Akbar. What he would say? Tell me. We say, astaghfirullah, astaghfirullah, astaghfirullah. What else he would say? Allahumma anta salam, minka salam. Barakta ya dhal jalali wal ikram. What else he would say? He would say Ayatul Kursi. Nah? And then he would make dua after the salat, after the taslim. Now, it's very important, my brothers. Everything has its proper time, its place, its amounts. It has to be in compliance with the Sharia. The type, its jins, its origin. All of this has to be in conformity with whatever you're going to do, regardless of whatever act of worship you're engaging in. Inshallah, brothers, we're going to stop for the adhan. Inshallah.
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله حي على السلام حي على السلام
على الفلاح حي على الفلاح الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله.
بسم الله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله. استحباب رفع اليدين حال الدعاء. The recommendation of raising one's hands while supplicating. We have in Sahih Muslim عن عمارة ابن رؤيبة رضي الله تعالى عنه رأى بشر بن مروان على المنبر رافعا يديه فقال قبح الله هاتين اليدين لقد رأيت رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم ما يزيد على أن يقول بيده هكذا وأشار بأصبعي المسبحة. Umara ibn Ruwayba, he said that he saw Bishra ibn Marwan on the minbar. He saw him on the minbar, and what he was doing on the minbar. A lot of times the imams, what do they do on the minbar? They make dua. They make dua. No? This is good. However, Bishra, what was he doing? Rafi'an yadayh. He was raising his hands. He was raising his hands. So he made dua himself. He said, may Allah disfigure these hands of yours. May Allah disfigure these hands of yours. I have seen Allah's Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, when he made dua on the minbar, he didn't do no more than this, and he pointed with his fingers. He didn't do no more than this, right? Raise the finger up when he made dua. And the ulama say there was an exception when he was on the minbar, when the man, he came in the masjid, and he said, O Messenger of Allah, the crops are dried, the place is in famine. The Prophet ﷺ, during that one specific time, he raised his hands. However, it was the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, whenever he made dua upon the minbar, he never raised his hands. So therefore, we do not raise our hands. Right? Outside of the times where the Prophet ﷺ did not raise his hands, and when it is mashrur to raise your hands, when you turn to Allah, and you want something, and you want to supplicate to Allah, raise your hands. For indeed Allah Ta'ala huwa hayyun kareemun yastahyi min al-'abd yamuddu yadayhi ila as-sama' yarudduhu ma sifra. Allah Ta'ala, he is shy. He's kareem, he's generous. He's shy and he's generous. Nah, he is shy that an abd raises his hands and he returns and gives him nothing. Inshallah, well, we're going to stop here and to establish the salat. There are some points, more other points that we'd like to talk about. Perhaps we'll finish them tomorrow, inshallah. Imam Abdullah, perhaps maybe he would give a kalima after the salat. But after the salat, inshallah, we have food downstairs. We want all the brothers to go and to partake and get some food, inshallah. We're going to take some up to this as well. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك.